Hello and welcome to the Nutrition Diva podcast. I'm your host, Monica Reinagel, and today I want to share some perspective on a recent study that caught a lot of people by surprise. This study, which was published in the British Medical Journal, suggested that taking fish oil supplements might increase your risk of having a stroke. Not surprisingly, this has sparked a lot of discussions and raised questions about these super popular supplements. So if you're wondering whether you should keep taking your fish oil supplements or if it's time to reconsider, stay tuned. This study utilized data from the United Kingdom's Biobank project, which followed over 400,000 participants aged 40 to 69 over the course of 15 years. And much to everyone's surprise, the analysis revealed that for people without heart disease, taking a fish oil supplement was associated with a 13% increased risk of developing atrial fibrillation and a 5% increased risk of stroke. Among those who had heart disease, on the other hand, regular use of fish oil supplements appeared to reduce the risk of adverse cardiovascular events or death. So while taking fish oil appeared to have some benefit for those already with heart disease, healthy people seemed to be worse off when they took fish oil. But it's also important to point out here that the overall risks of stroke or atrial fibrillation in this cohort were pretty low to begin with. And this is when it's important to distinguish between a relative risk and an absolute risk. Let me explain what I mean here. The absolute risk of stroke in this study was 1%, meaning that only 1% of all the subjects experienced a stroke during the 15 years of this study. Among the fish oil users, the relative risk was 5% higher. That means that their absolute risk of having a stroke increased from 1% to 1.05%. In other words, while the results were statistically significant, the real-world impact was pretty modest. And beyond that, the study had some limitations. First and foremost, this was an observational study, and as such, it can show associations or patterns, but it cannot prove causation. There may have been other factors that weren't fully accounted for, such as differences in participants' diets, lifestyles, and overall health. Additionally, the study's participant pool was predominantly white, so these observations wouldn't necessarily be generalizable to other ethnic groups. And finally, the study did not provide detailed information on the dosage or the specific formulations of the fish oil supplements that were used by the participants. So let me explain why that matters. Surprising findings like this always raise questions about what biological mechanisms are at work. Can researchers propose any reasonable explanation for why fish oil, with its decades-long reputation as a heart-healthy nutrient, could possibly increase the risk of cardiovascular disease? A handful of theories have been put forth, but many of them center on the idea that while fish oil might be beneficial at moderate intake levels, very high concentrations could create imbalances that interfere with heart function. And this is why it's so problematic that we don't really know how much fish oil people were taking. It could be that these relatively modest increases in risk were only seen in those who were taking very high doses of fish oil. For all of these reasons, I'm inclined to suspect that this particular finding is a bit of a red herring. However, this is not the first study to question the benefits of fish oil supplementation when used to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Longtime listeners might remember an episode I did in 2021, actually not that long ago, questioning the wisdom of fish oil supplementation as a preventive strategy. A large meta-analysis that was published in 2018 looked at 10 different clinical trials involving individuals either with heart disease or who were at high risk of developing it. And the researchers in that study found no significant association with fatal or non-fatal coronary heart disease or any major vascular events. And they concluded that there was no support for the current recommendations for the use of these supplements in people with a history of coronary heart disease. And then in 2020, There was a large placebo-controlled trial involving over 13,000 participants from 22 different countries, by the way, who either had heart disease or, again, were at high risk of developing it. And the study found that even high doses of fish oil, they were looking at 4 grams per day, provided no benefit in reducing cardiac events. So, as I said back then in that episode, I don't think we've overestimated the value of omega-3 fats, but we may have underestimated the benefits of getting those omega-3s from whole foods instead of supplements. In my opinion, these latest findings further support the advice that I offered in 2021. While it is important for us to get sufficient omega-3 fatty acids, we are probably better off focusing on getting them from foods rather than supplements like fish oil. 2 or 3 servings of fish a week would be enough to meet the recommended intakes for EPA and DHA. Those are the type of omega-3s that are typically found in fish oil supplements. And when we eat fish, instead of taking a fish oil supplement, we're also getting all of the other nutrients that fish provide, including high-quality protein, selenium, and vitamin D. For those who do not eat fish, plant-based sources of omega-3s, such as flaxseed, chia, hemp, and walnuts, also provide fiber, lignans, and antioxidants that contribute to our health. However, because the conversion of those plant-based omega-3s into the more active EPA and DHA forms is fairly low, you do need to eat these foods more regularly. If you can manage it, 1 serving of one of those every day would be great. Finally, while the benefits of fish oil supplements for general heart disease prevention may be questionable, there are other conditions, such as depression or high triglycerides, for which targeted supplementation may be useful. So if your doctor has recommended that you take fish oil for one of these specific concerns, be sure to check with them before discontinuing it. If, on the other hand, they might have made a more casual recommendation for fish oil just for general prevention, it might be worth asking whether any of this new research has altered their view on that. Either way, however, I hope this discussion today helps to put this new research into perspective for you. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer, you can email it to me at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com. You can also leave me a voicemail at 443-961-6206. I'd also like to invite you to check out my other podcast. It's called The Change Academy, and in that show, we explore the art and science of creating positive behavior change, both in our own lives and in our workplaces and communities. You'll find it everywhere you find podcasts. Just search for Change Academy. Nutrition Diva is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast, and I couldn't do it without the support of Brandon Getchis, Nathan Sems, Davina Tomlin, Holly Hutchings, Morgan Christensen, and Cameron Lacey. That's all for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week.